one of the things that I've definitely reflected on is the recognition from Time Magazine is less of a competition to say that I am simply better than everyone else. It is simply highlighting work that both myself and my team have done that's inspiring others as well to be thinking about a very important subject, such as the contribution of building materials to climate change. So, in the words of many of my mentors, recognition is a responsibility. It's not a bragging right. And both myself and the people that have worked with me to get this far definitely feel that way.
How did you come up with the idea of using plastic waste for low-carbon buildings in the first place?
My journey with Kubik started while I was at UNICEF. I worked at UNICEF for well over 7 years, mostly in New York, working for a pretty incredible group of people in a division called UNICEF Innovation. And one of the things that we always focused on at UNICEF Innovation was how can we take a very problematic issue that children face around the world and apply new ways or new technologies for trying to solve it or trying to be a solution towards it. And as part of that work, I had the pleasure of working with one of my mentors who led our Côte d'Ivoire office at UNICEF in creating the first ever circular economy project. And the reason why we focused on that had a lot to do with the rising issues that we were seeing in children's lives when it came to their well-being in cities. Cities were becoming the main place where children live. Over 70% of us will be living in a city in the coming 2 decades. And their problems were a lot bigger. They are more susceptible to diseases. They're more susceptible to not having adequate education. And this problem is only going to rise. And one of the things that we saw was trash. Many rapidly growing cities have a challenge in managing their waste. This is a global problem. Now, one of the things that we saw in parts of the continent here in Africa was the capital and infrastructure is not yet well equipped to be able to handle the growing amount of waste due to the rise in population of people in cities. And because of that, trash, especially plastic trash, was becoming a source for breeding grounds of malaria-carrying mosquitoes. It was becoming a way where waterborne diseases that cause diarrhea for children was being harbored, and we wanted to put a stop into that. And through that thesis, through that challenge, there was an innovative way that we were able to take a lot of that trash, turn it into very affordable bricks, and make schools. And about 4.5, 5 years ago, this project started in Côte d'Ivoire, where now we have been able to build over 500 schools using that. And that has been really the core of the inspiration for me personally, for those who have joined me at Kubik. And what we wanted to do is be a lot more ambitious and say, well, this thing worked in Côte d'Ivoire. And if this thing worked for schools, this must be able to work to do something a lot bigger and tackle this global crisis around plastic waste, but also be able to drive affordability in buildings, especially around how people live. And Kubik came with that thesis, but the other thing that we noticed was how this technology was 5 times less polluting than cement, which is the primary ingredient of making decent buildings. And we said to ourselves, wow, we're not only tackling plastic waste and increasing affordability in housing, we also have a shot of decarbonizing the built environment. And having these 3 be the core pillars of the impact Kubik can bring has been one of the reasons why we've made it this far.
Could you share your insights into your impactful work, particularly the involvement of underprivileged women in collecting waste for your factory? The way you collect plastic waste.
We went into thinking that the biggest issue with waste collection was a lack of people to collect, and actually we were proven wrong very quickly. Actually, there's a very large workforce, not only in Ethiopia, but throughout the world, of people who are called waste pickers. And they try to look through what people have thrown away and add value to it by selling it on the recycling market. Now, when we looked at this workforce, what we noticed is over 80% of them are women. They're doing all the hard work. But when it comes to the value chain of actually selling it to companies like Kubik, they got a very small slice of the pie. And because of that, they were economically unprivileged. They were marginalized. They were working in very poor conditions and really didn't have the means of making decisions to better their lives. And we did not want to stand for that. We felt there's a better way, which as a company that is going to be buying a lot of trash can influence of how we can directly buy from these waste pickers. And by doing that, we felt we can do several things. Of course, first and foremost, we can be able to give them a much better slice of that pie, but we can also give them access to basic services through partnerships that we formed with civil society. Services such as better hygiene, better workplace kits so that they stay safe, but also access to training that makes them included within the banking system. And all of this can become foundational for them to grow as individuals beyond the work that they've done and become empowered enough to make decisions for themselves.
Kidus, can you briefly explain the process of turning plastic waste into a low-carbon buildings in a way anyone or kids can understand?
Yes, of course. Well, first off, when we're talking about buildings, there's probably three things that go into it. There's cement, there's bricks, and then there's metal to make sure that those cement are strong. In order to make cement, you have to dig into the earth. That requires a lot of petrol or diesel. That requires harming the environment, but you can get your ingredient that way. And then you have to transport it, you have to mix it and use it. And that's what makes it actually very polluting. And it can also be very expensive. What we figured out is we can make that same building with the same amount of safety, with the same amount of quality, but we don't have to dig into the earth. We don't have to spend so much on using diesel, and we don't have to transport it in a way that can be harmful. But we could do that by taking plastic, and there's many different types of plastic. So think of your plastic bag and the bottle that you use being very different types of plastic. But we take the types of plastic that nobody else wants. And we're able to mix it in a way that can give that brick, that column, the strength that it needs to replace the very polluting and expensive cement product. And since we are talking to kids, think of Lego, right? We are able to interlock all of these materials so that you don't need cement to hold it together. And it could be as simple as anyone that has very basic skills to be able to assemble it. So you're also creating jobs for people that usually would not have been qualified to work in the construction sector.